the chair of the Division of English, Communication, Fine Arts at Spooner College, as well as instructor of drama and English. He has run the theater program for SRC since 2014. Joining Doug today are cast and crew members from this November's production of Hamlet. Is it Bree? Lawson? Is it Alicia? Allison? Alyssa, okay. Irwin, Tyree Mack, Kim Wallace, and Christian Frew. Not Jordan.
Boy,
only his friends call him Jordan. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for choosing us, because of course you had other options, so we very much appreciate this. As was already said, I teach drama and English and run the theater program here. And when Andrea approached us originally, she asked if we wanted to do maybe a scene or a portion. And I said, well, how long are the sessions? And she said 50 minutes. And I said, well, our play is going to run about an hour. So if we were to give you that much of it, then you probably wouldn't buy a ticket and come see it. So I said, well, what if we did this? So we came up with this idea of basically just having this panel discussion that one of my Christians said, well, it sounds like a Comic-Con panel. It's like, well, I've never been to a Comic-Con, but I'm sure it's very much like that. So it's going to be very informal. We don't have a presentation. We don't have any prepared remarks. We are basically halfway through the rehearsal process for Hamlet. We opened on November 9th, and we started our rehearsals just about 4 weeks ago. And so we're kind of just maybe past the halfway point. And so discovering the world of Shakespeare, and Hamlet in particular, is something that is always going to be a part of any production of the show, as it is for any play. But I think Hamlet in particular, most of you probably have at the very least heard of Hamlet. Some of you may be more familiar than that. But in the 400 years since it was first written and produced, in Shakespeare's time, there have been very, very few times when there hasn't been a production of the play going on somewhere in the world. And I'm sure that right now, as we're doing ours, there's somebody in various countries around the world doing their versions of it. And every generation seems to rediscover the play and rediscover the character of Hamlet and the situations and all of that. It touches on so many of our constant human themes. And we'll talk about some of those as we go along here. So we decided that we would simply share with you in a very informal way our group, collective process of discovering the play, and also our individual journeys of discovery with the play. And of course, we do have our very own Hamlet among us, and he can talk to you about the character quite a lot. And I know it's been an amazing journey of discovery for him so far. And you know, for me, as a director, I always go into a play thinking I know the play and I think I know what it is. I always learn more as we go in, and I always, always, always learn from the actors, and I learn from our technical theater artists. I learn about the play from them because they're discovering it on their own, and there are things that I just never really see that they discover on their own. It's just a wonderful process. And no less so for this play than for any other play. And it's so rich and full as a work of art, both of literature and theater, that it's you could probably produce it, you know, half a dozen times and never learn everything there is to know about it. And with our version, we're learning about a third of what's available, because we're doing a very short version of the play. We're doing our condensed version of it, so it's like we affectionately call our version Highlights from Hamlet. But if you want to see it, then of course you give away less of your time to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with a person to my immediate left and give her a chance to talk a little bit about her role and what maybe she has learned along the way. And I guess we'll just go ahead and go from right to left as we go down and have each person introduce the other. So I'm going to turn it over right now to our stage manager for the show. How many of you are familiar with the role of stage manager in a theater production? A couple of you a little bit. The stage manager is the person who knows the show better. I mean, and when I say the show, I mean our production of it. Knows the show better than anybody, and that includes me. Okay, stage manager knows the show better than anyone, and it's a massive responsibility. And the fact that we always have a student be our stage manager, I think, has been a fantastic thing, and I've worked with some great stage managers, and this one is going to be no exception to that. So let me turn it over right now to Bree Lawson. You can stand or remain seated if you wish. Entirely up to you.
I'll probably say seated.
Okay, so Bree's our stage manager. Take it from here.
Hi, my name's Bree, as was previously stated. Being a stage manager has been such an adventure for me, even though it's only been 4 weeks. This is my first time not being on stage here at Spoon River College, so it's been really different, but good different, really good different. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, so naturally I've been telling people what to do my entire life. And I don't think that this show is an exception to that. So I always have to catch myself saying, like, I'm sorry guys, I'm stage managing you. Literally 20 minutes ago when we walked into the room and I was like, okay guys, let's put the tables together, let's get this going. It's like, I'm sorry. But I think that it has been a journey of discovery for me as well, because I've been familiar with Hamlet for some time now, I thought. And then we started doing the show, and you know, every rehearsal I read the script at least once, and then you know, I go home and I study it to help my actors and everybody discover more of themselves within their characters. And you learn a lot by not being on stage. And I don't really know what else to say right now.
Well, maybe you could talk a little bit about maybe some of your expectations, since you had studied the play before, I know in at least one class. What can you say about what you expected going in, something that actually starting to put it on stage, something that might have surprised you, something that was different than you thought it would be once you put it on stage?
Okay, so I think it was last spring when you came to me and you said, I want to do Hamlet. And I was like, here? Like, you want to do Hamlet? Like,
no, let's go Broadway.
I'm like, we have like 6 people, literally, right here. And you probably know that the cast in, you know, a normal, classic, whatever production of Hamlet is huge. There's a ton of people. He's like, I want to do Hamlet. And I'm like, are we going to have to bring in the community? Or am I going to have to call my whole family to come in to be the cast? And he's like, no. We're going to have about 11 people. And I'm still like, are we going to be able to do that? But then we did. And we had auditions, and auditions were fantastic. We got our crew. We got our cast. We have not really that much of a crew yet, but I mean we have the crew that we need, but we don't have our. That's beside the point. Anyways, I tend to ramble. I think something that I expected when we started the show was I expected it to be a lot more difficult for myself to sit back and watch these new people, because a lot of them, this is their first show at Spoon River College. This is, you know, my first show stage managing, and I'm kind of bossy sometimes. I expected it to be really difficult for myself to sit back and watch these people play roles that I have always dreamt of playing. And, you know, I thought that I was going to catch myself being like, hey, you should do this, or hey, you should do this, or you should try this, or I think I would do it that way. But then I sit back and I watch these actors do their own thing on stage, and it's just fantastic to see them, you know, they use their own instincts, they use their own, you know, things that they come up with on their own, and they do things that surprise me every single day. And it is just fantastic to watch them grow as actors and as people. It's just really, really great.
One more question, if I can, for
Yeah,
you. I'll probably ask you guys some of the same things, or you can just kind of anticipate and just go that direction yourself. What do you think are some of the most important themes in the show? What are we trying to explore as a company, do you think?
I think one of the main themes of Hamlet, and something that you will probably agree with because I stole it from your class.
At least you cited your source.
Is seeming versus being. You know, a lot of things in Hamlet seem to be, and a lot of things actually are, and I think that that's something we have really, well, a lot of the people that are in the drama class, and even in the show exclusively, that we've explored during every rehearsal and during simply just text work rehearsals and everything, is that's a lot of what we think about, is seeming versus being.
The very first line of the play is 2 words: who's there? And I've always thought that line, a question about identity, sets the tone for the rest of the play.
Absolutely.
Everything is about, well, who are you? Are you who you seem to be? Are you someone else? Am I who I think I am? And so the question, who's there, becomes, like I say, maybe the defining, or at the very least the underlining sort of, or underlying, one or two, or both, kind of theme or idea that runs throughout the whole play. And I'm not sure there's ever a definitive answer to the question of who's there, but it's certainly a question that the play delves very, very deeply into. So I'm glad you went that direction. There are lots of themes. I'm glad that you went to that one. Do you want to introduce the person on your left?
Yes. This was a huge surprise, actually, because we didn't know, Timmy's my cousin, so we didn't know he was coming back to Spoon River College this fall. So then Doug was like, "Hey, Timmy's coming back," and I was like, "Yeah."
He wasn't sure.
Anyway, so
I finagled some things in order to make it possible for him to come back.
So this is his first show with us at Spoon River College. He took the acting class with us last year, acting 1 and 2.
Yeah, 2 classes, yeah.
So,
And you took the intro to drama in Havana with Carol Davis.
yeah, and now
So-
you're taking the film class,
And
which is not a drama class.
Nope.
This is our Hamlet, Timothy Wallace.
Oh, said I'm Tim, or Timmy, as everyone seems to call me.
Or Tommy.
Or Tommy. I have about a million nicknames amongst these guys. Like she said, this is my first play here at Spoon River, but I've been doing community theater back in Rushville, where I live, for a few years now. I've been involved in some sort of theater most of my life. This is by far going to be the hardest play I've done, due to the fact that I've never had such a huge role in one of the plays. It's really interesting for me because I've always known the story of Hamlet, at least the main gist of the whole story. Actually,
You've seen The Lion King, right, basically?
yes. If you've not seen The Lion King, you understand what Hamlet's like. But to study the lines and the basically the whole role of Hamlet himself has been really interesting for me. It's seeing a lot more than just, it's not just a small bit of madness that Hamlet has in the play. It's not just, he's not just out for revenge totally. His interactions with each of the characters is completely different with all of them, and it changes throughout each scene. One scene I'm loving, one scene I'm angry, next scene I'm just completely crazy. So it's really fun to be able to go through all the emotions that a human can really go through in basically, like Doug said, about an hour-long show.
What if anything, since you knew the show, the play pretty well before starting in rehearsals, what is something that you discovered about the play so far through rehearsal that maybe surprised you a little bit?
Some of the relationships between the people. Like knowing the story a little bit beforehand and now actually reading into the script, like how close Hamlet and Horatio are as friends. The way Hamlet is towards Ophelia, you know, like I said, 1 minute he seems to be completely loving, and then he goes off on this spat, and then he tries to be, in a way, loving again, I guess you could say. It's hard to explain.
Hashtag me too.
But seeing like our king, who's also our ghost, the reactions that Hamlet has, not so much as afraid of the ghost as some of the other characters are, because he sees his father's ghost. But then his king, who you would think he would see his father in, because we have them as twins, completely despise the guy. Which would, in retrospect, understandable because of the story of him marrying my mother and stuff. But that's been like the most interesting thing to me is the interactions between the characters and how much they change throughout the play. It's also been the most difficult part for me is going from emotion to emotion between each character that I'm interacting with.
And it turns over pretty quickly in our version.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't have any time to go from like, hey, I'm happy, not anymore.
How well have you adapted to the verse? Because of course, all Shakespeare's plays are primarily in verse. So how has that been for you?
That part, it's a little difficult to be able to speak in Shakespearean verse. The words that he uses makes it really difficult to memorize the lines as well. As we go along, it's been getting easier. I remember I still stumble over some of the things I have to say because the words that he puts in, like the words passeth show.
It's a phrase that you don't want to say fast.
If I slow it down enough, I can get the words out so it sounds correct, but easily the hardest speaking I've ever had to do in a play.
And one of the things I've tried to emphasize with the cast is that the obligation, the responsibility that actors have for Shakespeare is so much greater than in plays that have language that feels more modern to us, because sometimes there's either a set of lines that are going to be difficult for our modern ears to make sense of, and so we have to use other means to convey that meaning when the words maybe don't do as much as we hope they will. Plus, Shakespeare gives us very few stage directions. Not none, very, very few. And so there are moments that have to be conveyed entirely through the actor's facial expressions, body, gestures, physical relationship with somebody else in the space on the stage. Just yesterday in a rehearsal, I was working with Alyssa on that Alyssa and Tyree, on that very thing, and I said, there are no lines here. You have to take some time with this, allow this moment to develop with the exchanged glances, with the physical movements, and I know that Timmy has kind of struggled with that a little bit too, and it's a matter of slow it down, and so the language is beautiful, and as poetry, it's beautiful, but if you're trying to make sure your audience is going to stay with you, you really have to make sure they understand, and it's really all on the actors to make that happen. What do you think, Timmy, is one of the most important themes of the show?
Actually, from especially like mine and Tyree's point of view, family.
Mm-hmm.
My love for my father, and even though there is a scene where I get mad at my mom, I still show that I love her. Tyree, with the love for his sister and his father, that's a huge theme between at least our characters and Ophelia as well. And you can see it through my mother, Gertrude, and Polonius somewhat.
Yeah.
He's got some love, but I see it's like a big family thing as being a big theme for the play.
Which I think fits in nicely with the questions of identity and seeming, and how much love do I show to my mother? How much love do I show to my uncle/father? My stepfather is my uncle, and I think those dovetail pretty nicely. No big surprise that Shakespeare did something pretty well. Anything else you want to add right now? We'll probably come back to you, but
That's all I have.
do you want to introduce Alyssa then?
Yes, this is Alyssa Irwin, who is our Ophelia. And Osric as well, yes, I forgot. She is also Osric.
Yeah, this is my first show here at Spoon River College, but I've been in theater for a very long time. I was in one of Larry's shows, The Hobbit. I've grown up around theater my entire life, and it's always been a dream of mine to play Ophelia in Hamlet, and I'm glad as a theater major I do get the opportunity to. During the show, I think we've all grown as a family, because from playing card games down in Taylor Hall before rehearsal to up in the green room running the fight scenes. Like, learning stage fighting is not easy. Definitely the scene between Ophelia and Hamlet, where Hamlet's abusing me.
Yeah, he's roughing you up.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. But our fight directors have been really patient and willing to put in their effort to work with us and make sure we're all safe. During the process, I've really come to find myself through my character and how much me and Ophelia can relate, because she loves her brother, and I love my siblings, and family. It's huge to me, and it's huge to Ophelia. Definitely Laertes, like when he leaves, Ophelia's mad because she's not going to see her brother. So, yeah.
What's been the biggest challenge for you, Melissa?
Probably the wording. I'm not gonna lie, I do stumble over perusal.
You just said it. Perfect.
Well, you can do it in rehearsal now.
But yeah, this is my first big role. I've always been an extra character. Like from Grease to Annie in high school, I've always been the person in the background. But it's always a journey. I'm glad I get the journey to play Ophelia.
And Ophelia is a difficult character.
She is.
And I think sometimes people, when they talk about the play, give a little short shrift to the character as being simpler than she is. I don't think she's simple. I think there's some extremely difficult things going on. I've had people say, well, she's the only fully innocent character in the play, and I don't know that she is. I don't know that anybody is innocent in the play. She is complicit in kind of betraying Hamlet a little bit. And I think there are a lot of reasons that Ophelia goes mad. Spoiler. Because there's a reason that she goes mad, but I think it's not just what we always hear about. It's her father's death, of course. But in some indirect way, she kind of plays into that by going along with the schemes. Now, you could also say, well, what choice does she have? The king and her father are both saying, you will do this. But there's something to be said for, how much does she have going on there? And so emotionally speaking, I think Ophelia is an extremely difficult role.
She is.
What do you think is an important theme in the play?
As Timmy stated, family
Okay.
and love.
Okay. Good. All right. Do you want to introduce the person on your left?
This is Tyree. He plays my brother Laertes. And the player.
A lot of doubling up on roles.
Yeah, so wow, this play brought me a lot. Like, the biggest thing I realized is like the realization of the play compared to what you might assume about the play. Like, when I first read the play Hamlet, I wasn't even remotely in theater at the time. So it was just like, you see this and like, wow, the only character I really see and notice is Hamlet. But then Doug gave me the role of Laertes, and I really got to learn that, like, Laertes, like, for somebody who doesn't know much about Shakespeare, Laertes is a bigger character than what we might realize and more common to us. Because you can see how human he is throughout the play compared to a lot of the other characters. Like, when he loses his sister and father, he really, like, most people grieve, like, he grieves a lot, but then he hides it with anger, which a lot of the time us as people do, so he's like really relatable, and thus he ends up using this anger to think irrationally, like impulsively, and he just doesn't think about things. Because anybody who loses their father and their sister just kind of so it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. And then it came to realization, like, these characters are not just someone who was just placed there, but instead there's a lot more to them than I thought at first. So it was just like, when Doug told me we were doing Hamlet, I'm like, I'm like, oh my Hamlet. But then like these weeks, I'm like, wow, maybe I judge the play too soon without, really knowing much about it. So that was like, I liked it,
How do you feel differently about the character of Laertes now compared to how you did maybe when you were first cast?
Well, now I could see like the character of Laertes. Like before then, when I just looked at the script, I'm like, wow, he's just mad because I didn't understand the language of Shakespeare in Hamlet. So it's just like, wow, he's just like a one-dimensional character. All he wants to do is get revenge because a big chunk of the play he's not even in it. So in our version, so it's like
that's in all versions. Okay.
Yeah, it's just
Just go
a big
meet friends
chunk.
and come back later.
It's just a big chunk of the play. I'm not there, so it's just wow. It's just this very humanoid character who loves his family, and then all of a sudden he's just mad. So I'm like, wow, that's kind of lame.
That's Laertes'
That's
fault.
not-
He chooses to go to France.
That's like I could see why Laertes starts with an L. Laertes equals lame. But then I saw like the humanistic side of him, like why he was angry rather than just putting my own personal bias on the character. And it was like a real eye opener to know that he actually, you could see the reason why he'd be angry, which is the reason anyone would be angry. And it's just wow.
One of the character notes I gave Tyree for Laertes early in the process was that Laertes is a little bit, well, probably the other way around. Inigo Montoya, for those of you who know Princess Bride, Inigo Montoya is in part based on stock characters from Shakespeare's time that were revenge heroes. And so I said, think about Inigo Montoya. You killed my father, prepare to die. And that's literally what Laertes does, comes in and says, you killed my father, and somebody's going to die, and if it has to be you, then it'll be you. And he's talking to the king, of course.
Does he have that accent to it?
Yeah, but that's a character note that's a starting point. As Tyree correctly points out, that barely scratches the surface of the character. And one of the things that we do with a play like Hamlet is we try, in our popular imagination, to simplify it, and one of the ways we do that is that we turn certain characters into cardboard cutouts. And I think Laertes is one of those. I think Ophelia is one of those. I mean, Elizabeth was talking about that. And I think what we do when we actually decide to make it real on stage is we have to tear down those cardboard cutouts and see what's actually there. And that's that is for me. Now I've never seen those cardboard cutouts as a literature teacher. I've taught the play for decades, so I never saw them that way. But I think for actors in particular, it's important that we get below the surface and find out what's really there. And because it's Shakespeare, there's more there. You absolutely know that there's more there, and that's part of what we're doing is finding that out. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen shows over the past 2 years. This is actually Tyree's third year in the program. If you saw his first show, he was in A Doll's House and played the character of Dr. Ron. The growth of this young man as an actor and as a person is nothing short of astonishing. Tyree has been a leader among this group right from the start. I turn my actor's attention to him and say, well, look what Tyree's doing here, and he's become a model for them. And I cannot tell you how proud it makes me to watch him grow as a performer and as a person. And it's been amazing, and I'm just so very proud. So there, yeah. See what you got me to do? See? Tyree, what do you think is a really important theme?
An important theme about this one, as well as family, was that it ends up more toward, like, you see it early on with Hamlet, is that he's hesitant, but he has a good reason to be hesitant, because you shouldn't be quick to impulse just because something bad's happened to you. I think you should thoroughly think it through instead of just acting upon what's came across, which it's pretty rational theme, because you see it at the end where, I'm not going to say anything, but you'll see it at the
Most
end.
of us probably know.
Why?
There are very few people on their feet by the end of the show. So.
Yeah, so you'll just see that how, because Larity's impulse and like impulses of Hamlet and Larity's is just, it was a negative outcome for the most of the cast. So
And the knock on Hamlet so often is that Hamlet's indecisive, and I've always rejected the idea that he's indecisive. It's much more complicated than that. You know, in my literature classes when we study Hamlet, I frequently make the same comparison that Tyree just made between Hamlet and Laertes. Laertes is a really important character that helps to illuminate the character of Hamlet in how the two of them address the same thing. They both had fathers murdered, and they react obviously very differently. And I think that reveals a lot about Hamlet's character, integrity, motivation, that sort of thing. So I'm glad that Tyree brought that up. Why don't you introduce the person on your left, Tyree?
this is Christian Frew, aka Ghost and King Claudius.
That's right.
You know, our shirts say something's rotten in the state of Denmark, and it all comes from basically my two characters. I mean, not a lie.
The rest of you.
I mean, my character, the Ghost, basically starts Hamlet off on the journey to killing my other character, the King. It all comes down to my two characters starting off the bad stuff, and in the end, my character's ends and the bad stuff that happens within the play. Really, so there's just, oh boy. But yeah, I have no idea what I was going to say after that. This is my first time acting here at Spoon River College. Last semester, I was a prop stagehand for the play Eurydice, which another great production from the RSOC theater program. This play is very hard for me because, one, it's my first time acting in a play. Because I'm a short film director. I know almost nothing about theater. So to have my first play and then when Douglas told me, we're doing Hamlet, and I'm like, what? I'm like, well, this is going to be a swift kick in the butt for the first time. But I really second-guessed my initial thought when I first auditioned for the play. My main goal when I first went into that audition room was to be the Ghost. Mainly just because I like spooky things. But now that I've played the character more, I've learned more, not just about the Ghost himself, but about Claudius, his twin brother, who murdered him. And it's really sad. And it just shows that even the people you think you know the most, you can't trust them sometimes. I mean, that's not the lesson of the entire play, but for my two characters, that's what the dead king learns about his brother. And when he tells Hamlet, dude, your uncle killed me. I mean, not in those words, but initially that's what he's like.
There's not much duding going on in the script, but yeah.
But no, when the Ghost King tells Hamlet, your uncle killed me, it really puts in perspective that things aren't always the best. And like most of the cast has said, a major theme of this is family. But not in always the way that we think when we think family. We usually think of the theme family as something that's good. Oh, family, yes, we're all happy and together. I really feel that in this play, our family theme is that not everything goes well, usually. I mean, obviously, most families don't end up killing each other, but not all families are as happy as can be.
You make one mistake.
And that, but that's really our theme of our play is family, and sometimes family can have good things and bad things, and really the royal family has a lot of bad things going on, from me killing my twin brother and then marrying his wife to,
Don't give it away.
well, I mean,
More split.
sorry, but I would say the thing I've learned the most while being in this play would have to be teamwork. Because in theater, without communication, without actually sitting with your castmates like I've done with Timmy, like I've done with Alyssa, like I've done with Tyree, we have to sit together and we have to communicate and talk about, hey, what's our ideas for what we want to do with this scene, or the next scene, or the scene after that. Because if not, then we don't know what we're going to do. So it's all really about teamwork and getting together and realizing what do we, not just as actors, but as really creators in our own minds, want to do with this play. And really, Doug is our director, but at the same time, we as actors have a creative mind as well that we like to put in with our play. And as Doug likes to say at the beginning of every rehearsal, if there's something you want to try in a scene, try it. And if he doesn't like it, he'll let you know. And most of the time, it's something that will just blow his mind, and he'll like it.
This is true. What was your reaction when you first saw the cast list and you saw that you were both the Ghost and Claudius?
I was excited, but at the same time I was scared.
Good.
Because I didn't read too much up about Claudius before the play. I looked up more about the Ghost because that was what my main thing for the role was. I either wanted to be the Ghost or Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very happy with the roles I got, and I'm happy to know that I'm learning more about my characters every day.
And you know, Timmy being cast as Hamlet, I think to some extent it was, saw his name, oh, I'm Hamlet. Oh crap, I'm Hamlet. You know?
No.
You know, very arguably the most famous theater character in all of theater history worldwide. No pressure there, right? I mean,
No.
what could possibly go wrong, right? And you know, Christian was saying something about how somebody else, a student, member of the cast or crew, can suggest something, and let's try it and we'll see. And it often works out very well. I mean, I have always, I mean, you've been around the entire time, practically.
Literally. I've been here forever.
She was in my very first show when I took over running the program. You know, when I screw something up, I say, well, I don't want to repeat what I usually say, but what I usually say is, that looked like, you know, crap, we'll say. And I say, let's change that. And if it's, you know, it's something that I did, something that I said, I want you to do it this way. And when it looks bad, I say so, and then I say, let's try something else, and often somebody will have a better idea than I had. And I think what that does, I hope what that does, is it gives everybody the idea that we're all going to screw up. I mean, we're making art. You're going to screw up. That's the way it works. You try things, it doesn't work, you try something else, and eventually you'll find something that does work. And they're great about it. Casting Christian as both the Ghost and Claudius was not my idea.
It was mine.
It was Gray's idea. You know, we do deal with casting struggles, and the struggles don't have to do with talent. They have to do with numbers. As she pointed out, even our truncated version of Hamlet has a lot of characters. We've cut out 3 major characters: Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and the Norwegian Prince Fortinbras. They're gone. And obviously a number of minor characters have been eliminated as well, or composited into a single character. And even with all of that, we still have trouble, you know, casting every role. And Bree said, well, why don't we make him both? They're brothers after all. It's like, well, yeah, it's a fantastic idea. And not only is it a fantastic concept, in the actual event, in the reality of it, having Christian be both those roles, it's been amazing. And I should point out that Christian, I think he sells himself short. I've never really done, well, okay, but he was the first one to start putting his script down and reading his lines, or saying his lines from memory. He was way out in front of most of the cast. Not that they were behind, but he was
Right.
just really ahead of the game with it. And I've been so delighted to work with him, and he's got such a great sense of humor, even at his own expense. We had a moment early in the blocking rehearsals. The actors.
Oh boy, it's
the
the
actors-
story.
It's a great story. the actors, of course,
It's the
have the
story.
script. And when we first go out and we're blocking out the movements on stage for each scene, the actors write their blocking movements on the script pages so that they can be reading that and seeing this and then doing that until they put their scripts down. And there's one scene early in the process where he's doing his thing as king and he starts to say something and he stops, his face turns red, he starts laughing. I said, "What?" He said, "Well, I was about to start reading my blocking, you know, take a couple steps to the right."
Well,
you
he
know?
actually did
Oh,
that.
good, okay,
He
yeah.
was saying his line and it says, "Take 3 steps to."
Everyone looked at their scripts like, that's not part of the script.
It's like, where was that? And so it's been great having Christian because he's got a great sense of humor and a wonderful work ethic, and just delighted to have him along. Alyssa and I think maybe Tyree also mentioned fight directors. For those who aren't as familiar with the theater process, when you have a show that involves what we usually call stage combat, which could be anything from one actor pushes another actor down on the floor. Anything from that all the way up to actual literal swordplay. All those things are considered stage combat, and
We've got them all.
we do. I mean, there's almost nothing we don't have in Hamlet. And when I decided to do the show, I was fully aware that we would need to have people with the skills to choreograph stage combat, which is not part of my skill set. I have this much training in stage combat, but I have really no experience and certainly none teaching it. And so I knew we were going to have to do that, and I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I knew I was going to have to figure out, well, the long and short of it is we've got a couple of grad students from WIU's theater program who have come in, and they're doing our stage combat choreography as a part of their curriculum in their MFA program. And they've been in 3 or 4 times now, 3 times? 3 or 4 times now. Seeing these guys work is amazing.
Oh my God.
It's absolutely incredible. Alyssa has learned to fall on stage. Timmy has learned to pick somebody up by their hair with you not really grabbing them by the hair. And of course, Tyree as Laertes and Timmy as Hamlet have had several sessions now working with the actual stage swords. And by the way, a stage sword is still a sword, and it's still very dangerous.
It's so cool to watch.
And so for me, the important thing of all of this was to make sure, and the fight directors, this is their first thing, number one priority, everyone must be safe. And so what they do is they set about the process of making sure the actors are all safe while creating a convincing illusion of combat. And again, just watching them work. I mean, there was the one moment where they started with the scene between Hamlet and Ophelia where he roughs her up. That was the first thing that they did for us, and they worked that several times. And Alyssa, you fell 600 times or something. Maybe a slight exaggeration, but it's hard to do right and safely. And when she finally got it, all the rest of the cast sitting up on the risers spontaneously burst into applause because that's what she got it. So it's one of those things, and it's been amazing working with them. Sento, Ashby, and Bryce Robertson are their names, and they're good guys and very talented theater artists, and we are very excited about that. We have till 20 after, is that correct?
20 after.
Okay, so we've got about 3 more minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Talk for forever.
Do you guys have any questions for us about our process? Rob, go ahead.
I've got 2, but I think I'll just take one home with me and imagine it. The one I'm not going to really ask is, I was going to ask the rest of the cast if they thought Bree was bossy. I'll just take that one home
That's
with
a
me.
fair
Yes,
They
So,
can say yes.
Simple
I'm
answer,
awesome.
yes.
so the one I'm going to ask is, I know several of you have alluded to acting in high school, acting in community theater. What are the similarities and differences between a college level and acting in the community theater or high school?
In high school, we do more musicals than actual drama,
community theater, it's actually, it's a whole different process. Like, we really don't have auditions like the college did. They basically let people hold scripts until the very last day, hoping that they have all their stuff memorized. Yeah, it's,
Same with high school.
so it's like that, you always have that comfort blanket with you. Now we don't have that. Like, we rehearsed with a month with them, and now we're off them.
Yeah, and another big difference is that unlike, high school, like, you're more professional, so you're supposed to be taking it as a professional thing. Greatest quote ever, your greatest show is always the next one.
After we drilled that into
It's your last one. It's your next one. Your best performance is always your next one. That's correct. So.
And with high school productions, it's just people that you've gone to school with every day since you were in kindergarten. Like before, I didn't know Timmy, or I knew Tyree and Christian because they're in my theater class. But I mean, you meet new people and you form a bond with them that you're gonna remember for a lifetime.
One of the things I've heard student company members, both cast and crew, tell me is that we manage in our productions to form our own family, and that's very gratifying. I mean, I will admit that that may not be my #1 priority as a director, but the fact that it happens, I think, makes our shows better, which is my #1 priority. And so I'm always glad that we can manage to do that. And there has never seemed to be cast versus crew rivalries. It seems like we all work as a team, and that's always a good thing.
That'd be weird.
Especially a show like this one. So.
That would challenge you to a little bit.
Anybody else? Any questions?
How
in
many
the last?
productions do you do a year? Do you do just the one or two?
We do 2 shows. One in fall, one in spring. A lot of colleges do a full 5 or 6 show season, and we just don't have the resources for that.
Do you use the same crew?
We hold auditions and interviews separately for every show. So our spring show, we may have some of the same people, probably will have some of the same people. We'll have our same stage manager, for example. But we'll have new auditions, and people who are on stage for Hamlet may be in the crew for the spring show, or vice versa. We want people who want to be part of it. If somebody comes and says, "Can I be part of this?" we say yes. We may not know at the time where we're going to put them, but I would say the same thing. We're going to find a place for you where you're going to do us the most good. And that's kind of our modus operandi, I guess. We do have students on scholarship, and several of the folks here are on scholarship. Yeah, it's anybody who wants to be a part. That's what we do. We make art, and we do it with the students that we have, and it's actually a very gratifying thing.
Do you know what your spring one's going to be?
What's that?
Do you know what your spring?
Oh, our spring show is a wonderful little comedy called Private Lives by Noel Coward, a British playwright. After Hamlet, it felt like we needed to do something that was maybe a little lighter. Although we have done some light, haven't we? Yeah.
maybe a little too much.
I made a joke the other day that we're going to do a sitcom style and call it "That's My Hamlet" or something like that.
That's so Hamlet.
That's so Hamlet.
That's so
Okay.
Hamlet.
I guess that's our time. So
Well,
thank you all for your kind attention.